In a world where the pressure to be seen, heard, and noticed is constant, it's easy to overlook the quiet power of stillness. The ancient Stoics understood this deeply. True presence does not demand attention. It radiates from calm clarity, from the subtle strength of someone who moves through life with purpose, composure, and restraint. There is a magnetism in restraint, a quiet authority in those who act thoughtfully, letting presence speak where words are unnecessary. Strength is not measured by what you display to others, but by the mastery you cultivate within. To act with intention, to align your choices with your values, to let every gesture and pause reflect who you truly are. This is where influence is born. Each decision becomes a reflection of character, each moment a chance to demonstrate wisdom quietly yet undeniably. The Stoic path reminds us that real power is subtle, grounded, and enduring. It arises from authenticity and self-control, not from noise, spectacle, or superficial performance. When you move through the world in this way, every interaction gains depth. Silence carries meaning, presence holds weight, and intentionality shapes perception. People respond not to the loudest, but to the composed, not to the frantic, but to the steady. In this alignment between inner life and outward expression, influence and attraction emerge naturally, without effort, without demand, and without artifice. Most people move through life on autopilot, reacting instinctively to opinions, criticism, and fleeting approval without pausing to consider why. Each reaction leaves a subtle mark, signaling insecurity or habit more than intention. Over time, these patterns make a person predictable, easy to read, and ultimately easy to overlook. But when you learn to pause, to measure your responses, to act deliberately, everything changes. Silence begins to carry meaning, presence gains weight, and each gesture reflects clarity of mind. Marcus Aurelius once noted that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and when you choose your responses carefully, your inner life colors the way the world perceives you. By mastering your impulses, you create a quiet authority that others notice instinctively, even without words or overt displays. Restraint only works when it's grounded in authenticity. Silence without substance feels empty, but silence rooted in truth feels magnetic. Many people spend their lives adjusting themselves to fit in, changing opinions, hiding interests, filtering personality, and in doing so, they dilute their own presence. But living in alignment with your nature creates stability that no external approval can provide. It is in this space of authenticity that the power of silent attraction emerges. When you stop performing for others, when you act from principle rather than compulsion, your presence becomes compelling. People sense depth, coherence, and integrity, and they are naturally drawn to it. Presence, however, is more than showing up physically. It is being fully engaged mentally. Most interactions are diluted by distraction, checking phones, thinking ahead, or half listening. But when you focus completely, listening without interruption or anticipation, you create a rare and powerful connection. Silent attraction is less about how you are perceived and more about how you make others feel, seen, understood, valued. Emotional control amplifies this effect. In tense moments, when others react impulsively, a composed, steady presence creates an invisible gravity. People feel safe around it, drawn to the calm assurance that is increasingly rare in a reactive world. This calmness, combined with intentional restraint and authenticity, forms the core of magnetic influence. The less you reveal up front, the more naturally curiosity arises. People are drawn to depth, to layers, to that which is not immediately available. Subtlety, measured disclosure, and a touch of mystery invite engagement and attention. At the same time, this does not mean distance or coldness. True restraint is intentional, knowing when to open up and when to step back, creating a rhythm in engagement that conveys control and confidence. Alongside presence and composure, consistent self-care amplifies silent authority. The way you maintain yourself, your appearance, hygiene, even small details like a signature scent, signals self-respect and reinforces the authenticity that others intuitively notice. Emotional control is the final thread that binds silent attraction together. In situations of tension, when emotions run high, most people react impulsively. But when you remain calm, steady, and deliberate, you create a rare magnetism. Others feel it subconsciously, trusting your composure, orienting to your presence, and responding with engagement and respect. Calmness, especially in chaos, is inherently attractive because it is uncommon. Combine this with authenticity, subtlety, and consistent self-mastery, and your influence becomes effortless. You are no longer chasing attention. Your presence demands it naturally, a testament to the power of intentional, deliberate living. If you want to continue exploring these principles and deepen your understanding of presence, influence, and self-mastery, make sure to subscribe. By subscribing, you commit to observing, learning, and embodying the timeless wisdom of Stoicism, cultivating a presence that resonates beyond words and leaves a lasting impact wherever you go. True restraint holds power only when it arises from something genuine within. Silence without substance can feel hollow, like a void that invites indifference rather than curiosity. But when stillness is rooted in authenticity, it resonates. It carries weight not through noise or display, but through the quiet authority of alignment between thought, word, and action. Many move through life adjusting themselves to fit external expectations, altering opinions to match the majority, hiding interests to avoid judgment, filtering personality until only fragments remain visible. This constant performance is exhausting, mentally and emotionally, and it signals to others that the true self is negotiable. Authenticity, on the other hand, is perceptible even when it speaks softly. There is an unspoken gravity to someone who exists in alignment with their own nature, a subtle energy that draws attention without effort. Living in alignment with your true self is a practice the Stoics emphasized deeply. When your thoughts, values, and actions are coherent, there is a stability that no external approval can shake. It is a presence that emanates naturally, commanding attention not through force, but through quiet consistency. The person who acts from this inner foundation no longer seeks validation, and in letting go of performance, they paradoxically become more visible. Their words carry more weight because they are grounded, their gestures are deliberate, and their silence communicates what constant speech cannot. Epictetus taught that the measure of a person is found not in their ability to impress others, but in their mastery of self. And in this mastery lies a magnetic authority that cannot be manufactured. Consider how often people expend their energy attempting to shape perception rather than embodying it. The over-explainer, the one who constantly seeks approval, inevitably signals uncertainty. Others sense it, and attention drifts. But the individual who no longer performs does not require validation. They respond from principle, from clarity of purpose, from a place of internal alignment. There is a coherence in their presence that draws others naturally, a kind of silent gravity. When people observe someone who is not compelled to perform, they are subconsciously invited to engage on a deeper level, to recognize the alignment between internal conviction and external behavior. This is the essence of silent attraction. It is cultivated, not through flamboyance, but through integrity and restraint. The subtle power of authenticity is reinforced by everyday choices. How you express yourself, the consistency with which you uphold your values, and the way you navigate social expectations all communicate your internal state. Silence backed by genuine self-knowledge becomes a medium through which authority, trustworthiness, and magnetism are conveyed. The individual who has cultivated this quality does not need to draw attention. Their presence alone shapes perception. There is an almost gravitational pull in someone who embodies their values without compromise, whose every action reflects deliberation and purpose. This is why those who stop performing often find themselves noticed more, their interactions valued more deeply, and their influence expanded. Authenticity also allows for selective engagement. It creates a space in which interactions are meaningful because they are intentional. By embodying your principles consistently, you establish boundaries that communicate self-respect and discernment. Others intuitively recognize that your presence is rooted in substance rather than performance, and this recognition generates both respect and attraction. Over time, the accumulation of deliberate actions, considered words, and measured restraint constructs an aura that naturally draws attention. People are drawn to reliability and depth, to the coherence that emerges when internal alignment is mirrored externally. Psychologically, this dynamic functions because humans are wired to detect authenticity. Constant attempts to perform signal inconsistency, prompting subconscious distrust or disengagement. Conversely, alignment between inner state and outward behavior signals reliability, competence, and confidence. Carl Jung observed that people are drawn to wholeness and depth, to that which reflects integrity and self-awareness. When silence is infused with substance, it communicates exactly this, a coherence that is felt before it is consciously understood. The quiet person becomes magnetic, precisely because their presence conveys mastery, composure, and clarity. The discipline required for authentic restraint is significant but deeply rewarding. It demands self-reflection, awareness of impulses, and the courage to act according to principle rather than expectation. It requires the patience to withhold immediate reaction, to evaluate circumstances, and to respond intentionally. Each deliberate choice reinforces the internal architecture of authenticity, creating a consistency of presence that others perceive immediately. The person who embodies this discipline does not perform. They live in alignment with their values, and that alignment resonates outward, producing influence and attraction naturally. Living authentically also reshapes perception over time. Those who observe a consistent and principled presence begin to recognize and anticipate stability, reliability, and integrity. Actions no longer require justification because they reflect internal conviction. The weight of intentionality, the coherence between thought and behavior, becomes a defining feature of the individual. Others respond not to volume, gesture, or display, but to the subtle authority that emerges from alignment with self. This is a form of influence that is both subtle and profound, shaping interactions through quiet presence rather than spectacle. Restraint, when grounded in authenticity, fosters respect and trust. It signals that the individual is self-contained, guided by principle, and unaffected by transient opinion. The freedom that emerges from this alignment allows one to act from a place of deliberate choice rather than reactive compulsion. Interactions become richer, more meaningful, and more impactful because they originate from substance rather than performance. By mastering the balance between action and restraint, the individual cultivates a presence that communicates authority, depth, and magnetism effortlessly. In every sphere of life, social, professional, and personal, the consequences of authentic restraint are cumulative. Each deliberate choice, each thoughtful pause, each instance of integrity reinforces the perception of a person who is reliable, principled, and grounded. Others naturally gravitate toward such individuals, drawn by the consistency of their actions and the depth of their character. What is often overlooked is that the true power of silent attraction lies not in the moments of visibility, but in the constant alignment of self behind the scenes. The culmination of this practice is freedom. Freedom from external validation, from the compulsion to perform, and from the restless pursuit of approval. Authentic restraint allows one to navigate interactions with clarity, authority, and composure. The attraction that arises from this presence is not superficial or fleeting. It is enduring, grounded in character, and expressed in every subtle gesture, deliberate action, and measured word. The individual who stops performing does not need to demand attention. Their authenticity ensures that it is drawn naturally, consistently, and irresistibly. In the end, the power of restraint is inseparable from authenticity. Silence becomes compelling, presence becomes magnetic, and influence flows naturally from integrity. By ceasing the endless performance, by aligning thought and action, and by embodying the principles that define your character, you cultivate a presence that is quietly irresistible. Attention follows, not because it is sought, but because it is deserved. The discipline to stop performing is the discipline to be real, and it is in that reality that the strongest form of attraction quietly resides. The way you move through the world communicates more than any words ever could. When you stop performing, when the need to impress or explain yourself diminishes, people begin to read the unspoken. Every subtle shift in posture, the steadiness of your gait, the calm with which you enter a space, all of it conveys meaning before a single syllable is uttered. This is the language of presence, a vocabulary written in the tension or relaxation of muscles, in the cadence of steps, in the energy you radiate. People sense it instinctively. They perceive alignment between thought and action, coherence between intention and expression. It is here, in the realm of silent communication, that influence begins to emerge naturally, effortlessly, and in ways that no overt assertion can replicate. The subtle language of the body is more persuasive than speech because it is difficult to fake. Nervousness, uncertainty, and inconsistency manifest almost immediately in posture and movement. Conversely, when a person moves from a grounded sense of self, from clarity of mind and purpose, their presence exudes a quiet authority. This authority does not require explanation or justification. It is felt. Carl Jung explored the idea that human attention is drawn to coherence and integrity, and the individual whose external comportment reflects internal alignment naturally attracts interest and engagement. Silence and stillness, in this context, are not emptiness. They are vessels of influence, amplifying every word that is chosen to be spoken. Consider the difference between those who rush to occupy attention and those who allow space to exist around them. The former overwhelms, the latter captivates. When you step into a room with calm and measured motion, people orient towards you instinctively. Your actions signal deliberation, your pauses convey discernment, and the natural rhythm of your movements communicates balance. The observer registers these cues unconsciously, forming an impression of reliability, competence, and magnetism that is far more lasting than anything conveyed through hurried speech or performative display. This mastery of presence is subtle but profound. It requires acute self-awareness, an understanding of how the body conveys internal states, and the ability to synchronize thought and action. By cultivating deliberate posture, steady gestures, and measured pacing, you communicate more about your character than endless verbal explanations ever could. Seneca described the power of restraint in behavior, emphasizing that true wisdom manifests not only in thought, but in the consistency of action. By moving with quiet certainty, you embody the principle that composure and intentionality are as compelling as any argument or display. The interplay between stillness and action enhances perception of credibility and influence. When speech is interspersed with deliberate pauses, when gestures are measured rather than impulsive, attention is naturally heightened. Each word gains significance, each movement communicates purpose. The balance between silence and action becomes a rhythm that draws people in, invites listening, and establishes authority without overt effort. People lean in, not because they are compelled, but because the coherence of presence encourages engagement. The individual who embodies this balance exercises a form of influence that is both subtle and undeniable. This practice extends beyond the mere mechanics of movement. It is a reflection of self-possession, of emotional regulation, and of alignment with one's principles. The body becomes a mirror of the mind, translating internal clarity into external perception. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the importance of congruence between thought and action, suggesting that authenticity manifests most powerfully when internal conviction is expressed outwardly. In mastering the interplay of silence, posture, and motion, one creates a presence that is consistent, compelling, and magnetic, reinforcing the depth of character without reliance on words or performance. The impact of such deliberate presence is felt immediately and accumulates over time. Initial impressions are strengthened by the subtle cues conveyed through controlled movement and measured action. Observers intuitively sense stability, reliability, and integrity. The person who moves with quiet certainty communicates a confidence that does not need validation. It creates it. Interactions become more engaging, dialogue more meaningful, and influence more profound. Through consistent practice, deliberate embodiment of calm authority becomes second nature, and silent attraction manifests as a natural consequence of authenticity, mastery, and alignment. Ultimately, the power of presence is inseparable from the internal mastery that produces it. Every step, every gesture, every pause becomes a vehicle for influence when it is rooted in coherence between inner thought and outward expression. Individuals who cultivate this mastery of body and motion do not seek attention. They command it effortlessly through quiet authority. The resonance of calm, grounded, and deliberate presence shapes perception, fosters trust, and draws others in without the need for spectacle. It is through this alignment, through the silent language of the body, that one becomes magnetic, compelling, and quietly unforgettable. Silence is often misunderstood as a void, something to be avoided or filled, yet it functions as a conduit for presence and impact. When you allow moments of quiet, you create a space for thought, reflection, and observation, both for yourself and for those around you. The unsaid communicates as much, if not more, than words themselves. Carl Jung observed that the power of what is unexpressed can shape perception and influence behavior in ways that speech alone cannot. A measured pause signals confidence, self-control, and discernment. It allows the listener to engage actively, filling the gaps with attention and interpretation, heightening the impact of every subsequent word. Silence becomes a tool of influence, subtle yet profound, commanding attention through restraint rather than volume. Consider how interactions unfold when silence is embraced rather than avoided. Most people rush to fill conversational space, offering explanations, justifications, and opinions without restraint. This habitual overcommunication often obscures meaning and diminishes presence. In contrast, someone comfortable in silence communicates through intention rather than compulsion. Each phrase becomes precise, each gesture deliberate. The observer perceives not just what is said, but the deliberate thought that precedes it. This creates a sense of authority and gravity, an invisible structure of influence that draws others in and encourages engagement. The ability to wield silence in this way transforms ordinary conversation into an exchange of significance and presence. The strategic use of silence enhances both perception and connection. When you speak less but with intention, listeners lean in, attentive and engaged, aware that what you do say carries weight. Every word becomes a focal point, amplified by the restraint that precedes it. Oversaturation of speech, by contrast, dilutes meaning, tires the mind, and often alienates the listener. Silence frames significance. It structures the conversational experience, creating a rhythm where each contribution matters. Those who master this rhythm convey not only competence but also depth, a quality that invites both curiosity and respect. The subtlety of deliberate silence is reinforced by posture and presence. When paired with a calm, grounded demeanor, each pause communicates stability and confidence. Observers unconsciously read not only your words, but the space you occupy, the steadiness of your gestures, and the intentionality of your movements. The combination of measured speech and deliberate stillness conveys authority without demand. Seneca remarked that the value of restraint lies in its ability to enhance perception and cultivate respect. In conversation, the silence between words functions as this form of restraint, magnifying the effect of speech while communicating mastery of self. Deliberate silence also creates psychological space for others, fostering engagement and attentiveness. By refraining from filling every pause, you allow the listener to process, reflect, and invest in the exchange. This promotes a deeper connection as the conversation becomes collaborative rather than performative. The balance between speaking and silence establishes a rhythm that signals thoughtfulness, awareness, and integrity. It transforms interaction into a meaningful exchange rather than a barrage of words, inviting others to participate fully and respond with care. The impact of measured silence extends beyond perception to influence. When others recognize that your words are chosen rather than reflexive, they assign greater credibility and importance to what you say. Each statement carries the weight of consideration. Each pause communicates deliberation. Marcus Aurelius noted that true judgment arises from measured thought, suggesting that deliberate expression is a reflection of wisdom and insight. In the context of conversation, this means that what is spoken resonates with authority, and what is left unspoken draws attention, intrigue, and respect. Mastering silence requires awareness and self-discipline. It demands that you resist the impulse to speak merely to fill a void or assert presence. By cultivating the ability to pause, to observe, and to respond with intent, you strengthen not only your influence, but also your internal composure. The external perception of authority and magnetism is the natural outcome of internal alignment. Every carefully measured response reinforces confidence and credibility, demonstrating mastery over both communication and self. The subtle power of silence, when cultivated, becomes an enduring tool for connection and influence. Over time, comfort with silence transforms the dynamics of all interactions. Conversations become more thoughtful, meaningful, and impactful. Listeners become more attentive, engaged, and receptive. Your presence, amplified by deliberate pauses and careful speech, communicates authority, authenticity, and intelligence. The attraction created in this way is not superficial or performative. It is rooted in the consistent alignment of internal mastery with external expression. Silence, when embraced and wielded intentionally, becomes a conduit for influence, connection, and magnetic presence, elevating every interaction through restraint, intention, and authenticity. Presence is a force that moves beyond mere physical existence. It is not enough to occupy a space, to show up and nod along, to move through the motions of interaction. True presence demands full engagement, a conscious attunement to the moment, to the person before you, and to the unspoken energy that threads through every exchange. Most encounters are diluted by distraction, eyes drifting to a screen, minds racing ahead to the next thought, attention fractured and shallow. In such spaces, communication loses depth, and connection becomes fleeting, superficial, and forgettable. But when someone offers their complete attention, when their mind aligns fully with their body and with the moment at hand, a rare resonance emerges. This is not a skill acquired through performance, but cultivated through mindfulness, self-mastery, and the intentional direction of awareness. The rare quality of true presence transforms interactions in ways that are subtle yet profound. Consider a moment in which another person's focus rests entirely on you, listening without interruption, without judgment, and without the rush to respond. It is a feeling of being acknowledged, of having your words and existence recognized on a level deeper than casual conversation. Carl Jung wrote about the significance of attentive presence, describing how the psyche of an individual responds to engagement that is authentic and undivided. When attention is given fully, it creates a mirror in which one feels seen,